Good morning, Europe, and good afternoon, Southeast Asia. Welcome to our webinar entitled Intellectual Property in Laos, Trademarks and Trademark Enforcement. This webinar is brought to you by the Southeast Asia IPR-SME Helpdesk project and the European Chamber of Commerce in Laos. My name is Nora, and I will be today's webinar moderator. Joining me shortly will be Dino Santaniello and Ayaka Wu. But before we hear from Dino and Ayaka, let's make sure that we all have a good understanding how this webinar platform works. So during the webinar, we look forward to a lively discussion. So please feel free to type in any questions you may have under the question box, and we will be answering your questions at the end of the webinar in live. Also, we will launch some poll questions during the webinar. So we look forward to an interactive webinar with our participants, so please participate in those poll questions. I mean, there will be only one question. And then please keep in mind that today's webinar is recorded and we will upload it to our website after the webinar, so you will be also able to consult our online recording. And now let's have a quick look at the agenda. So I will start with a very quick introduction to the Southeast Asia IPR-SME Helpdesk services. After, I will hand over it to Ayaka Wu, who is the Executive Director of the European Chamber of Commerce in Laos, and she will introduce you to the Chamber activities. And then we will pass to the main part of the presentation that Dino will deliver to you on the IP landscape of Laos. And we will wrap up the webinar with a live Q&A session. So the Southeast Asia IPR-SME Helpdesk is an initiative of the European Commission to help small and medium-sized enterprises to help and protect their intellectual property rights in or relating to Southeast Asia. All our services are free of charge. How can we help you? We have an inquiry helpline, so we can reply any questions you may have within 3 working days. So you can get in touch via email or call us or have a Skype meeting with us, or also in person. We also have a wide range of publications available online. So we have IP fact sheets related to the 10 ASEAN countries and various guides on industry-specific topics or also general IP type. Furthermore, we organize trainings across Europe and Southeast Asia throughout the year. But of course, for example, during COVID-19, all our activities were shifted online. So we also do a lot of webinars. Basically, every week we have a session. So keep an eye on our events calendar and feel free to sign up our future webinars as well. And we have some interactive learning tools, such as e-learning modules that you can also access through our website and learn about IP in a more interactive way. And now, without any further ado, I would like to pass the floor to Ayaka and invite her to give you a quick introduction to the European Chamber of Commerce in Laos. Ayaka, can you hear me? Yes, I hear you very well. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Nora. Good morning for people who are in Europe, and good afternoon for the ones who are in Asia. So first of all, I would like to thank Nora and the Southeast Asia IPR-SME Helpdesk for supporting this session, and also our speaker, Dino. My name is Ayaka. I am the Executive Director of ECCIL, and we are pleased to welcome you all today about the activity that the Chamber is undertaking. First of all, I will just talk a little bit about us. We are the only representative of the European business community in Lao PDR. We have been working since 2011, and we are counting now more than 80 members. So our mission is to promote and increase business between the Lao PDR and the EU member states for their mutual benefits. And in terms of activity, we are advocating on behalf of our member with white papers and white book, but we also produce other publications such as sector profile or market studies. We also do organize delegation inbound and outbounds and networking receptions. So if you wish to connect with the European business community, Lao PDR, do not hesitate to reach us. And we also have some successful trainings, which I believe some of you in Laos already participated in the past. And so the IPR session today is one of them. So I will not get longer. I will now give the floor to our speaker, Dino. And again, thank you for joining today.
Yes, thank you, Eka. And now I would like to pass the floor to Dino, invite him to the floor and listen to his exciting presentation. And just a very quick introduction. Dino Santaniello is an external expert of the Southeast Asia IPR SME Helpdesk, and Dino is also heading the Tilleke Gibbins office in Laos. He has a lot of experience on IP in Laos and across the region. So now, Dino, I would like to invite you to the floor.
Thank you, Nora. Thank you very much. So as you can see, my name is Dino Santaniello. So I'm now sharing my screen.
Yeah.
And I think, let me know when it's okay.
So I see you, just put it on full screen.
Mm-hmm.
Perfect. Yeah,
okay, fine.
Thank you.
So thanks to you, Nora. So my name is Dino. I'm now in Laos for 4 years or so. I'm heading the law firm Tilleke Gibbins. So we do a lot of intellectual property, but not only, but today we'll focus mainly only on intellectual property and specifically on trademarks. Originally, I'm not from here. I'm French. I'm a French educated legal advisor and from the south of France, actually. And I decided to move to Asia because before studying law, I used to study Asian languages, but I just felt like staying in the south of France wouldn't be enough for me to practice my linguistic skill. Therefore, I decided to move to Thailand first, and then I had the opportunity to actually work in Laos. So I decided to just jump in, and here I am with you today. I would like also to say that I'm very delighted to have the opportunity to reach out to an European audience because it's very, very difficult when you're in Laos to actually have that kind of interaction with people based in Europe, because unfortunately, up to today, Laos is not your destination for business trip. Maybe it will become soon in the future, but for now, most of the time I will have to go actually to Bangkok or to Europe to meet with my clients or people interested about IP and located in Europe to discuss about that. So for me, that's a great opportunity to be able to reach out to you directly. About this webinar, so we'll be focusing on trademarks and trademark enforcement, but I will also give you a broad idea of what is intellectual property in Laos. And here are the overview of the webinar I'm going to provide to you. And I would like also to tell you that if you're an expert already in IP, you may think sometimes my slides or my information too general, even though I believe that very few of you may know about the Lao regulatory framework. And I will try just to make the presentation entertaining for everybody. So in any case, if you have any specific questions about intellectual property, which would require more technical advice, maybe, please do feel free to write me an email or to write an email to the IP or help desk. They will reach out to me after that. And after my presentation, there will be also a Q&A session. So do feel free to ask me any question you may have about trademarks or IP in Laos. So we will be having an overview of the IP framework in Laos. And by the way, for those who are not very familiar with intellectual property, whenever I will be saying IP, it means intellectual property. Concept of a trademark in Laos. So is it the same in Europe or not, or is it something different? Trademark registration. How do you actually register your trademark here in Laos? And finally, trademark enforcement, because it's good if you have a law, it's good if you have a regulation to actually register your mark, but if you cannot enforce your rights, then it does not make any sense. So we will see if or not it's possible in Laos to enforce your rights easily. So first of all, since we have a European audience, I would like just to give a quick overview of Laos. So this is where I am actually presently. So here, Vientiane capital, and as you can see, it's very close to the Thai border. Also, before going further, I would like just to give a brief update about the COVID-19 situation here. So there's been lockdown measures, some lockdown measures here, pretty strict because there was confinement from April the 1st until May 4th. So every businesses which were deemed non-essential had to close their office, so they had to work from home. And Tilleke Gibbins, actually my law firm, did work from home during that time. On May 4th, the businesses were allowed to reopen, but most of them would function actually at that time on an alternate basis, like team 1, team 2, just to alternate the people, not to have the full operation back to work, the full staff back to the office. And since we can say that since May 14, everything is getting back to normal. But, and it's a very important point, the borders and the international checkpoint are still closed here in Laos. So we say for very few exceptions, we cannot go out from the country and we cannot enter into the country, but this may be eased very soon in any case. One thing also as well, hospitality sector has been particularly hit, definitely, because no tourists or almost none during that time. And accordingly, as you can see here now on my slides, the GDP growth could be impacted pretty severely. So for the few years, actually, Laos has had a GDP growth of 6.5%, which is very good indeed. But for the next year, for 2020, the Asian Development Bank already forecasts a GDP growth of 3.5 only. Nonetheless, Laos will remain under the top 3 GDP growth of Southeast Asia, behind, if I remember correctly, in the order, it would be Vietnam and Myanmar. And for 2021, the GDP growth expected would be 6%. So again, these are expectations, and Laos will remain in the top 4 behind Vietnam, Myanmar, and then Philippines, and then there will be Laos. So Laos has some international organization actually had good thing to think that Laos has optimistic reasons to believe in a good recovery and maybe faster than other countries. The political system now, I think it's pretty important because you cannot talk about law and you cannot talk about intellectual property and how it enforces, you enforce actually intellectual property in Laos if you don't have a good knowledge of the system here. So it's a one-party socialist republic, which means no competition in this regard. There is just one party allowed by law under the constitution. And that's a good thing in terms of stability. Laos is pretty stable as compared to other countries maybe around. We could talk about Thailand, for instance, where there have been some turmoil in the past years, but maybe in the coming years, who knows? For Laos, it's very stable. On the other hand, and that's what we will see that especially for IP enforcement, it could be a problem in the event that you think that the authorities have a bad interpretation of the law and they don't apply it correctly and they don't think alike, and so you could have some trouble to try to implement the law and apply the law as the law is written. So that's one thing you have to face on very regular basis here. But the officers are very willing also to help, to assist. So you have to engage in discussion, and then usually you always find a way out to make things work out. For the GDP sector, just to give you a brief idea, so agriculture, industry, and services. So agriculture is still pretty important in the country, and as far as I understand, it represents about 70% of the employment in the country. So that's a very huge sector, actually, pivotal sector for all the families here. Industry, we will be talking about here energy, mostly mining, natural resources. So as you may have read, Laos wants to be the battery of Southeast Asia. So hydropower plants are very common project here. And in terms of services, so unfortunately, there are not still like big companies providing big services. So mainly we rely on the very small SMEs. FDI for foreign direct investment. in the order: China, Thailand, and Vietnam. But it doesn't mean that European investment is non-existent here. French investment, it is existent indeed. And even the European Commission and some French agency, but also other European agencies are particularly helping Laos in various respects. I could cite, for instance, the AFD, Agence Française de Développement, which helped Laos in developing the geographical indication here. And also, I think, which is very important to understand the context, is not uncommon in Laos to have people speaking several languages. For historical reasons, you can find easily in ministries people speaking Vietnamese, Russian, Hungarian, but French, and I mean they speak very well those languages. And almost all Lao people, I don't like to say almost because I don't know them all, but I guess the vast majority of all Lao people can speak Thai, and they can also read Thai, which is not the case the other way around. So just to tell you that Laos is a very multicultural country nonetheless. So now let's focus on IP. So here is the poll question. So I would like to know, we would like to know if you have a trademark here in Laos or not. So A, yes, B, no, and C, not yet, but hopefully I intend to.
Thank you, Dino, for the poll questions. So we would like to invite the participants to select that they consider the correct answer, A, B, or C. We would give you around 30 seconds, and then we will share the result, and Dino can comment on it.
Okay, and I can go on, right?
No, wait a second.
Okay.
Wait a second for the. We will share the result in a few seconds. I can see that already more than 60% of the participants have voted. So let's give a little bit of more time. So we reach almost 100, and then we share the result. Okay. Yeah, I think we can show the result over 70%. So what we can see from participants that 18% said yes, they are owner of a trademark. 55% said no, they don't have a trademark in Laos, and 27% are not sure, or sorry, not yet, but intend to.
Okay.
So please, what do you think?
Okay, so which means that few of you have actually an idea of the Lao API regulatory framework, and that's a good opportunity for me to actually go in details on a few things during the presentation. But I'm not surprised also as well that not that many people maybe have a trademark register here, because most of the time, unfortunately, people may disregard Laos as the first priority whenever they want to register a trademark, as compared to Thailand, Myanmar, or Cambodia, even Vietnam, which are very dynamic countries. But specifically, maybe for a trademark, I would like to point out why it is very important to actually have a trademark registration here. So I will focus on that on the IP enforcement part. So just a brief overview of the IP framework in Laos. The framework is very nascent, and I mean it. You have also to understand a little bit of history of Laos. One thing is that there is no very old laws, and there is a reason for that. 1975, there is a change in the regime here, and one of the action of the regime was to cancel and repeal the former laws under the former regime. And the country didn't have any laws until 1989, 1990. And during that time, the country was functioning on decree, okay? So the first real regulation about a trademark was in 1995 to register trademark, and then there was a law 2007, 2011, and then the newest law, which is the one of 2017, in force since very recently, in June 18. And that law was actually followed by decisions. So basically those decisions are issued to implement properly the law. In Laos, law will be very general most of the time, and it's very difficult to just rely on the law in order to be able to implement the law. So most of the time, and not just for IP, but most of the time there will be decision kotok long, as we say in Lao, or damlat when it comes to be decree, to just implement and give further details on how to implement specifically some technical aspects of the law. So here is the case for trademark and trade names, new plant varieties, copyrights, geographical indication. So those were regulation enacted very recently. And in blue, I pointed out all those decisions which actually have not been updated since the new law. And we expect to have a new decision about these also as well. But for now, the officer will still rely on those old decisions, even though they're supposed to be outdated because they're not supposed to refer to the new law. And I could have also mentioned the penal code, for instance, because since 2017 and the first penal code ever in Laos, IP infringement is a criminal offense. And I could also have talked to you about the customs law. In Laos, there is a procedure where you can actually record your trademark at the border so that the officer can monitor the entering and exiting of counterfeits. But I will not mention it because we don't have much time, and I will focus mainly on the IP on the trademark. Sorry. So here, just to say, Laos is, we may think Laos as an isolated country, but as you can see, there is a lot of international treaty and commitment to which Laos is a party. And I will just mention one quickly, the protocol relating to the Madrid Agreement concerning the international registration of marks, which allow people to register their trademark in Laos from abroad. But I will just explain that it's not that easy, okay? But that's something we can do, and we noticed a good dynamic about this. There is more registration than before, and I think that's very good for the country. Then, not all the most relevant bilateral agreements of Laos, Singapore, Japan, China, they focus mainly on how to grant a patent. So say you have a patent registered in Japan, Singapore, and China. So you have the possibility to actually register your patent here, opting for fast track registration. So your registration of the patent here will be way faster than if you didn't have a patent registered in those countries. For Cambodia, it's a cooperation in regard to geographical indication. So same thing. If you have your geographical indication registered in Cambodia, then you can come to Laos with the certificate you had issued by the Cambodian authorities and register your geographical indication here. Again, it's a fast track system. So in terms of time frame, it's very difficult, and I will explain that the time frame sometimes is very flexible here in Laos. But nonetheless, this is the option we would actually recommend first to maybe register your patent or your GI in a foreign country, and then comes to Laos to use that fast track system. For Vietnam, honestly, I know it's about new plant variety, but I didn't have a look at the agreement, so I wouldn't mention it too much. And for South Korea, it's the same as China and Japan and Singapore. So what's intellectual property? It's very broad, they're the Lao law, but it doesn't matter. I mean, it's pretty much the same as the World Intellectual Property Organization's definition. So in Laos, intellectual property is the work of the human mind through inventions and creations. And as you can check here, it's pretty much the same as the WIPO and the international standard definition. And it's no surprise because most of the time, the WIPO will be behind Laos, assisting Laos, supporting Laos whenever Laos wants to reform their IP regulatory framework. So what does it mean? What type of intellectual property are protected in Laos? So again, it reflects what is usually protected abroad. And that list, so you have trademark and trade names, geographical indication, and so on. Not all of these IP need to be registered. Let's say copyrights, trade secrets do not need to be registered. Layout design of integrated circuits. Honestly, I think we had the talk with the DIP, so the Department of Intellectual Property here, and they say they never had a request about that, and they haven't yet registered any of those kind of IP. But for the rest, indeed, you can go and register your IP with Laos. For the Lao audience, I would like also to point out, because I know here there's sometimes some confusion. When we talk about trademark, it's Kermaganka, and when we talk about copyrights, Likasi. So please don't make the confusion. These are two different intellectual property. And when we talk about trademarks, the provision for trademark will not apply to copyrights. So I hope it clarifies. So how does it translate in real life, in everyday's life? So everybody has a phone. So I chose one of the most famous phone, the iPhone. And you can see that all kind of IP that are involved actually into that. So you have the trademark, industrial design, trade secrets for the manufacturing, or even at the stage of a project. There are a lot of trade secrets, copyright for the software coding and so on, and patent on things you wouldn't maybe imagine. But one of the most famous is maybe the slide to unlock, which one of the reasons of the big battle with Samsung. Registration of IP in Laos. So these are numbers we just received from the Department of Intellectual Property, but for 2020, they may need to be updated a little bit and may not be accurate yet. So if you want to have an updated version of that, we can recheck with the DAP again, the Department of Intellectual Property, and I can provide you maybe more updated numbers, because I'm not quite sure if they really stopped at June or not. But what is interesting to see, so first of all, you can see that the number of applications for patent, petty patents, and even industrial design is pretty low here still in Laos. I guess there are some reasons, as I told you, Laos is not the first destination whenever you want to register a trademark or an IP generally. And also maybe a lack of resources in terms of capability in examination and guiding the applicant through the procedure. This is very technical, and I think it reflects also why the number of patents is pretty low to date. For trademark, as I told you, since the Madrid Protocol, since the fact that because Laos is a party of the Madrid Protocol, and since that people can register the trademark in Laos from abroad, there have been an explosion of trademark registration from abroad, and I believe it's good. So when we say trademark, at first it means application which were filed by the national channel, I would say. So basically, I take my papers, my dossier, my application, and I go to the Department of Intellectual Property in Laos, and I file it. Trademark Madrid means those trademarks which were filed using the computer system from abroad. So at first, some IP law firm were kind of scared that the fact that Laos has entered into the Madrid Protocol would be a bad thing for them, because they would lose work for registration. But I think it's pretty good, because generally the dynamic of the economy will benefit of that, and also our work has just changed. Maybe we don't do as much as registration before, but we will do some other work, because even though you have to register your trademark from abroad, from let's say France, Italy, if during the registration there is a problem, then you need to contact a local lawyer. So we did have more and more instruction in this regard. As you can see also for geographical indication, there was a nice explosion also of, if I may, of registration. And here I will focus a little bit on geographical indication, because that's definitely one of the priority of the government to try to advertise about the local products. So they do have a high hope for geographical indication. And to date, there are 2 geographical indications which are registered. So one of them is a foreign geographical indication champagne, and the other one is a variety of sticky rice, as we call in Laos, khao kai noi. And this is a sticky rice from the northern region of Laos, very good. And for the other one, you can see there are a lot of pending GIs. So one of the foreign geographical indication pending now is Scotch whiskey. And then we can see for domestic geographical indication that coffee from Laos and some tea and silk are also now undergoing the registration process. So specifically about trademark, what is a trademark in Laos, and is it the same as what you could have in a foreign country or Europe or US? So here it's a definition of a trademark. And as you can see, it's not that different again from the WIPO. And again, this is just pretty normal because the WIPO is here to actually assist Laos whenever they reform their law. So according to the Lao law, the trademark refers to a mark, any sign, or any combination of signs capable of distinguishing the goods or services of one undertaking from those of other undertakings. So basically, it's a sign that enables you to distinguish one brand from the other, one goods from the other, one services from the other. And as a matter of example, when you see, just to get back to the Apple instance, when you see Apple, you know what it's about, and you may even have expectation in terms of quality and standard. So that's why a trademark is very important. It defines your good or your service. So in Laos, what a trademark may include. So this is from the law on intellectual property. So it can include words, personal name, letters, numerals, figurative elements, 3D animated picture, packaging, combination of color, any kind of combination of such signs. So it's very broad. And I will give you some example of trademarks here in Laos so you can have a better idea. And here you can see also I have put in red font, which is new, something which is new actually. Since the new law on intellectual property of 2017, you can also register 3D image, animated pictures. But, and that's why it's very important to actually be on the ground and to know that sometimes the written rule may differ from the practice. In practice, the Department of Intellectual Property doesn't have the technical capability to register it. They don't have the equipment for that. So if you come to us and ask us to register a 3D image, a motion, and animated picture, even though it's in the law, for now we can't. So we just, I will not talk about those type of trademark. Now, how a trademark is eligible in Laos as per the law on intellectual property. So first of all, you need to be sure that your trademark is not identical or even just similar, looking alike to another registered trademark or even a geographical indication which were previously registered here. Or for GI, it doesn't matter. Actually, you don't need to have registered it here to be able to enforce your right. Or if the trademark is not registered, if the trademark is a well-known mark, then if your trademark is actually similar or identical to a well-known mark, then you cannot register it also as well. I will get back to the notion of well-known mark later. The trademark shouldn't be also descriptive, which means it cannot be something just to designate your good in terms of type, quality, of the purpose. It cannot be also generic words, and it cannot also contain prohibited items. So what are prohibited items? There is a long list in the Lao law, but it's basically things that refer to you cannot use a national monument as a trademark. You cannot use also a flag as a trademark, a national flag as a trademark. You cannot use also very famous names as a trademark. In the local law, in the law on intellectual property of Laos, it will also specifically mention you cannot designate leaders of the political party as a trademark. So those are prohibited items, but not often actually they are obstacle to register a trademark. So here it's an example of trademark you have in Laos, and you can see also as well that you can register a trademark in a foreign language. But if you do so, and if it's not in English, here we have some Korean language and Japanese language, you would need to have a transliteration on how to pronounce that very specific trademark. And then also you need to ensure, and that's something that you need to check before, you need to ensure that that trademark has no offensive meaning in Lao language. Otherwise, it could be rejected at the time you try to register it. So now I will focus on the registration system. First, why you should actually register a trademark in Laos. So definitely, first of all, because it gives you a monopoly over a mark. So you will be the only one to be able to use that mark. And also that will give you the right to prevent others from using this mark without your authorization. And this applies to trademark which would be identical to yours, but also those trademark which we would say are confusingly similar to yours. Also, you will be able to have IP enforcement measures possible, such as a redaction or the seizing of counterfeit goods, which would not be possible if your trademark is not registered here. Indeed, if your trademark is registered, then the value of your mark is higher also as well. And you can use your mark as a collateral, even with a bank, for instance. You can use a trademark certificate. And you can use also your trademark to license it and to make a profit out of it. So as I said, two possibilities: national application. So basically, I prepare my file here, I go to the Department of Intellectual Property, and I file my application. And then also the application through the Madrid system. But if you want to file an application through the Madrid system, you need to have first an international mark, and which means that actually you need to register a mark in your country of origin and to transform it into an international registration mark, international mark. Then, and after then, you can actually go on the WIPO website and designate Laos as a country where you would like to register your trademark. As I said, it's a very good solution, but you need to be sure that you will not face any difficulty in Laos, because if your trademark for some reasons are temporarily rejected, then you will need to contact a local lawyer anyway, and the local lawyer will need to address the issue. So don't think because you have the WIPO, you can go on the website and register your trademark in, I don't know how many countries, but a lot, like more than 120. And don't think that you could just register your trademark in all those countries at the same time. No. And it could also jeopardize the whole trademark registration of the other countries you would like to register your trademark to. So before actually you use the Madrid protocol, so be sure first of all to have an international mark so that you can use the WIPO website to register, to designate subsequent country to register your mark. And also just be sure that there will not be major issue at the time you want to register your trademark here. So usually what we would recommend is to make what we call a trademark search with the Department of Intellectual Property here, which will be searching as to whether or not there is here in Laos similar marks or identical mark to the one you want to register. So this is roughly the registration process. So 5 steps: filing, formality examination, formality acceptance, and publication. And this is new. I will get back to that. Substantive examination, and finally, if everything goes well, the grant of the trademark certificate and the publication in the official gazette. So for the filing, pretty simple. And here I will just focus on the national application phase, not the Madrid protocol, which is something a bit different. So you need to have an application form provided by the Department of Intellectual Property, a power of attorney, at least if you want to use the service of an IP representative, specimen, which means an example of the trademark you want to register. So it could be a word mark, could be a design. As I told you before, it cannot be yet, or by law it can, but in practice it's not possible to have a 3D or animated picture. And you need also to define to what class you want to register your good or your trademark in. So basically your trademark will be linked to a type of good or services. So for that, if you want more information, I'm happy to answer after the webinar, or you can go also to the WIPO website and you can refer to the NIS classification WIPO, and you will have a very helpful information about that, or how to choose it. As I said, I'm happy to answer any question you may have about it later. And you have indeed to pay official fees. So they are not very high anyway, as you can see. And also about the class, I would like just to mention that Laos is a multiple class system, which means that you can choose more than one class. So if you want to file your good, let's say your mark, which is about IT, computer, but it could be also about something a bit different, advertisement. So you can choose the class of goods or service and register your mark accordingly. And so your mark will be protected for that type of class only. Formality examination. So as long as the filing goes well, if you bring all the documents, the DIP will just give you a file number, and then the formality examination is almost done. It takes about 60 days for officially to get over this. Oh, sorry, at the time of the filing, actually, you have the filing number, but the formality examination is just to review if there is any document missing and so on. If there are some document missing, then the Department of Intellectual Property will let you know. Also, if during the formality examination the Department of Intellectual Property notices that your trademark may not fulfill the requirement to actually being registered in Laos, they will let you know. And this is actually something new which opens to what we call the opposition procedure. So basically, during the formality examination, the officer will check whether or not your mark is similar to a mark already registered and so forth. And if so, you will be sent a notification. And from that day, actually, you have to respond to the intellectual property to see if you have good grounds to actually register your mark and to persuade the Department of Intellectual Property to register your mark. I will show you, by the way, later a little bit of the official gazette, because when the formality examination is over, then your mark is actually published in that official gazette. So any third party can check this official gazette to know if they want to oppose to your registration. Substantive examination. Here again, the officer will check by law if your mark fulfills the requirements. So I was talking, for instance, about prohibited item before. So this is exactly the type of things that the officer from the Department of Intellectual Property will be checking. And if your trademark falls under any prohibited item, then you will have, again, what we call an office action, a notification sent to you by the officer, and they will give you 60 days to respond. If you don't respond within 60 days, then your registration will be deemed as abandoned. And finally, you have the registration and the publication of your trademark. So the trademark certificate that will be provided to you is valid for 10 years from the filing date. And this is new because before it was from the registration date. So to date, at the time you actually submit your file to the Department of Intellectual Property, your trademark is protected. So this is what looked like the trademark registration in Laos. As you can see, you have various kind of information. So here, the applicant. And on the second page, you have also all the trademark specimen, the logo, and everything. And here you can see some other information about the trademark and the date of expiration. So here, as you can see, it's expired because it's an old trademark. But in the meantime, we have renewed the trademark, and we've been granted some renewal certificate just to substantiate, to evidence that this trademark is valid. So this is the original certificate of registration that is delivered by the Department of Intellectual Property. So for the Gazette, it's actually available on the website of the Department of Intellectual Property, and it looks like this. As you can see, you have different parts about trademark, and here we can see, for instance, all the new application of trademarks. So when the formality examination is done, that the officer are okay mostly with your documents that you have submitted, they will automatically publish it on the Gazette of the Department of Intellectual Property of Laos, and that will give the opportunity to third party to actually oppose the trademark registration if they believe that the trademark goes against their own rights, for instance. And then on the second page of part 2, you can see those trademarks which are already registered. And here again, is just to announce to everybody, to all the parties in Laos and abroad now, because it's available on the website of the DIP, that this trademark is registered. And here, from the trademark, from the time a trademark is registered, you can ask also for a cancellation for 5 years. So trademark enforcement, because I see that times is going very fast. This will be the last part of the webinar. So what about enforcement of the rights whenever you register your trademark here in Laos? So the law on intellectual property of Laos is pretty clear about that. There is a very, it's very straightforward. So every trademark owner, but most generally even IP owner, can protect the trademark. So for a trademark, it would be to prevent parties from using identical or similar sign or similar trademarks for the same goods and services. But also you can prevent any third party from using or even advertising the trademark you're the owner of. And also the law on intellectual property focuses, there is a section dedicated to unfair competition. So there is a very large room for you as a trademark owner here in Laos to have lots of legal grounds to be able to act against any IP infringer. So next we will see the possibilities that are offered, or the practical possibilities that are offered to IP owner here in Laos. So here I listed 6 types of remedies. So first of all, the cease and desist letter. So basically what it is just a letter you send to an infringer. The objective here is just to inform the infringer that you're aware of the illegal activity, and to inform the infringer that he's doing something that is not legal, and you would like to enforce your rights if it doesn't stop the action of infringing your IP rights. It's very, in Laos, it's very good, it's very efficient. Why? Because there is not a high level of knowledge about IP in Laos. So most of the time, many of the IP infringers do not even know what they are doing. They don't even know there is a law against that. So that's a good solution actually, to first inform the other party, to tell them that you can't do this because it's just against the law. And many times, I mean, majority of the time, we had very good results about that, and the infringer just stopped it and returned to us all the infringing goods. And also, this is something that would be required from the authority. They will ask you, did you try to mediate, to negotiate first before they may give you the right to go to the court, for instance, or even to complain with the Department of Intellectual Property. Then you have, and I will comment them both, civil action and criminal action. So you can go to the court for this, but honestly, there were not very much cases as far as I know, and it's very difficult to study precedents in Laos because decisions of justice are supposed to be deemed confidential. So it's very difficult to make a research, but according to our discussions with the local authority, there have been very few cases brought at the court level in Laos, and most of the time, every complaint will be actually dealt with the Department of Intellectual Property. So we will see that you can send a complaint to the Department of Intellectual Property, which will consist mostly in mediation. But the other thing you can do also as well, even before there is an infringement, is border control, customs recorder. So here is a map of Laos, and as you can see, there is Laos has a huge area of borders. So here is with Vietnam, here China, Myanmar, here all along here Thailand, and south it will be Cambodia. So why Laos is very important? As you can see, Laos is a huge platform in the ASEAN market between the ASEAN countries and between China, one of the main market in the world. So even though your product, if you're an IP owner here, if you have some goods or services that you distribute in Laos, and if you have registered a trademark here, even though your goods may not be destined to the Lao market finally, but most likely your goods may cross the Lao border at some point. If you have your goods coming from Singapore and you want to send it over to China, and you're using trucks to actually transport those goods, so you will have to cross Thailand, but you have to also to cross Laos before reaching to China. Same thing when your goods arrive from Vietnam and you want to then export those goods to Thailand, you will have to cross Laos again. And the same thing if you want to send your goods to Myanmar and your goods is coming from Vietnam. So just to tell you that we don't think very much of the Lao market as a very important market in terms of IP strategy, IP enforcement strategy, but it is. So here, administrative remedy. First, as I told you, Department of Intellectual Property, we can actually file a complaint to ask them for mediation. But the other thing also as well as we can ask to the authorities, and here it will not be the Department of Intellectual Property, but other agencies, and this is why it's very important in Laos to know very well how things work. There are some other ministries like Ministry of Industry and Commerce, which can be also involved in the fight against IP infringement. So here what you can ask also as well is to seize counterfeit goods in the country and to ask for the destruction also as well. And the next slide, because I see that my time is almost over. The next slide will be about a very brief case study. So here it's the kind of thing that we see often and often in Laos. There are actually two types of infringement here. So it's interesting to see if you can still take an action against this. So as you may see, these look like something that everybody or almost everybody knows. Here, the brand Hauda. And this is actually a trademark which is registered in Laos and whose owner is not Hauda. So could you take an action against that type of goods? So there are some infringement, but there are also a mix of trademark which are not yet registered, even though maybe confusingly similar. So yes, but the thing is, you can take the action specifically for the registered mark. When it comes to a trademark, a mark that is confusingly similar to another one, you may need to have first confirmation from the authority that this mark is actually similarly confusingly similar to another mark before you can take action. But as long as there is one infringement on the product, and that's my point, you can actually take an action. And when I mean take an action is you can actually ask to seize the good. Here again, it's so on the left, it's the original product. On the right, this is a counterfeit product. So there we have some techniques to actually identify the goods from the counterfeit, but for the layman, it could be very difficult, I guess. But again, this is something that we can definitely act. And then when I say we, even with the authorities, we can act against. So that's very interesting to say that in Laos, even though people may not believe that there is an IP framework which is very solid because the country is not very well known internationally, but it is the case. And that type of operation, we have led it like in many different areas. And here again, another example of counterfeit that have been seized. And this is the type of actually of redaction you can lead in the country. So basically, those officers will go on the ground, will seize the goods, will store the goods before the destruction. One thing about this also as well, it's very important to know pretty well the country, because I was talking about the very nascent framework in Laos, and also that reflects at the time we want to enforce these rights. What does it mean exactly? It means that depending on the province you go, you may have to choose carefully with which ministry you want to carry out the redaction with. We had some provinces where it was difficult to carry out the redaction maybe with the economic police, and we had some other provinces where it was maybe better to carry out the redaction with some other ministry which are connected to the type of good we want to seize. So the choice of the administration you want to carry out the redaction with will be very important, and you need to have a very solid knowledge of the country to take the proper action and to file your complaint to the right minister so that it will be effective. So for today, that would be it for me. As I said, I would be happy to have to answer your question, and I will pass the mic on to Nora.
Hi, Dino. Thank you very much for the presentation. It was very insightful, and you also kept it within a time limit. So thank you for that. I know there is a lot to say, and I have good news because we received some questions. So I would like to have a little bit of more time from you and also from the participants to discuss some questions. So one of the question is about how many, related to the classification, so how many classes exist in Lao? Dino, you are muted. Please unmute your mic. I cannot hear you.
Okay, I'm here.
Yeah, okay.
So 44. There are 44 classes. Actually, it's pretty much the same as any other country. I hope I'm correct. And those classes will be actually categorized as goods or services. So you have two different types of classes actually under the Lao law: service and goods. And you can register, when I was talking about the multiple class system, so it means you can register many classes for the same trademark, and those classes could be either goods or either services. You can register in the both in the same application.
Okay, thank you for that. Another question, quite practical. How long in practice is the trademark registration certificate issued from the filing of the application? So how much we need to wait?
Okay, so in the slide I've shown you, there's just a very, but maybe not big enough. There is a very short indication. So it's 10 to 15. But again, even when you read the law, there is no indication. And I think it's better for the authorities not to give any indication, because if they gave an indication but they cannot actually commit to this, it will still be very blurry. So here the authorities do not give any indication in the law, but in practice, that's what we observe, like between 10 to 15 months. It could be a little bit earlier than this. It could be later sometime, but this is the average time frame.
Okay, thank you very much. And then one question related to what is the regulation of people who use your trademark? So,
please, again, sorry.
Yeah, I think that the question is trying to say, like, what happens to those people who will start using the trademark of someone else?
Oh, okay. So we fall into the IP enforcement. So if those people are using the mark, but nobody complained about this, so they will just keep using it. So first of all, when someone is using it, you need to inform either the authorities to start, as I said, a mediation, the Department of Intellectual Property. You can also file a complaint to the court directly, but I would not suggest that, for the simple reason, I think, is because the judge do not have yet a very extensive experience about IP. So they will most likely let you know, please try to negotiate first with the IP infringer. And if things do not go well, so you may think about filing the complaint at the court level. You can also go at the police and file a complaint at the police about this. You will need to gather evidences, pictures, and explain to the police officer what it is about. Again, in some provinces, they may think that they have not enough knowledge to help you out. So the good thing is usually to start something with the Department of Intellectual Property to inform them that someone is actually infringing your right. They may start a mediation first, or you just can inform the IP infringer by way of a letter saying that you're aware of the infringement that is actually happening, and you ask to stop. And after that, you may think about taking an action either at the court level, or maybe you can go, as I said to you, to other agencies which are related to the goods, to the type of goods which is infringed. Let's say the Ministry of Industry and Commerce will also be able to help, maybe to seize or to find the person that is actually infringing your trademark.
Okay, thank you very much. And then I also wanted to have the opportunity to ask some questions that we received before the webinar. And there was an interesting question related to software or application protection. So is it obligatory to register with the Ministry of Science?
No, so software is protected by copyright. So copyright do not need to incur any registration to be protected, as long as you can evidence that when the creation happened and that you're owner of the creation, it's protected. But what you can do with the Ministry of Science and specifically with the Department of Intellectual Property is to file a notification. It will just add another layer of proof, of evidence that you are owner of the copyright. And this is this is just the usual provision for copyright. So software will be, and coding of software will be actually dealt with copyright provision, and it's protected without registration.
Okay, thank you. And another question is, what is the condition to become a well-known trademarks, and how about rights of well-known trademark?
So what is the condition? What are the conditions to be a well-known mark, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's a bit tricky for Laos, because we have many clients saying that they come here, they don't need to register because they are well-known mark, because they are known everywhere. But maybe they are known everywhere but Laos. So the thing is, well-known marks are marks which are well-known, which means that the population know it very well, but also the industry know it very well. But when we talk about the population and the industry, the test or the consideration of whether or not it's a well-known mark will be considered as a Lao perspective only. So it doesn't matter that your trademark is actually registered in the US, in Italy, in Europe generally. If it's not known here in Laos, it will not be considered as a well-known mark. And there is no guidance from the authority about this. There is no list provided also as well about the well-known mark in Laos. And so it's pretty difficult to anticipate what is a well-known mark or not.
Okay, that's clear. Okay, thank you very much. And one more question, if you still have a little bit of time.
Sure.
So are there any new laws on trademarks for small and medium-sized enterprises in Laos?
There is no law on trademarks specifically designated for SMEs, so small and medium enterprises. So the laws I just explained to you, I just tried to give you a brief overview about, are to be applied to SMEs also as well. So they are the same for multinational or for SMEs, just the same. So you have the same protection if you're a retailer, small retailer, or if you have your, I don't know, you're selling food on the street, you can also register your mark and you will be protected the same as those big companies.
Okay, yeah, well, understood. So with that, I think we would close the Q&A session. I would like to highlight to the participants that if there is any further questions they would like to ask from the help desk and Dino, don't hesitate to follow up with us after the webinar. And we also recorded today's session. So as I said in the beginning, we will share the recording with all of you. So you will have the chance to double check any information that you might be interested in. And if you need more support, just let us know. Thank you very much, Dino, for the presentation. Once again, it was a pleasure to have you. And also, we appreciate the support of the European Chamber of Commerce in Laos, especially to IACA, to promote this webinar in the Chamber network. And we hope that it also helped your members to get some more information on IP. I would like to highlight that we have some upcoming webinars in next week, already two webinars. These two webinars will be covering the whole region, and we will be discussing the impact of COVID-19. The first webinar will be only focusing on Southeast Asia, and the second one mainly on brand protection, and also we will discuss a little bit on China. And in the beginning of July, we will have a webinar on Myanmar. And yes, so please keep an eye on our upcoming session. And if you find the topic interesting, don't hesitate to sign up. It's free of charge. And one more closing remark is that we are now working on the update of the Lao fact sheet, where we also receive some support from Dino. And once this fact sheet is available, we will share it with EuroCham Laos. So you will also be able to consult the fact sheet and be updated on the latest news regarding the IP landscape of Laos. And with that, I would like to say to all of you goodbye. Thank you very much for joining, and hope to see you at our upcoming webinars in the near future. Thank you. Goodbye, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Dino. Thank you, Aika. Bye-bye.
Dino.